All right, let's jump right in today. We're going to be doing a deep dive into some really interesting research on large language models. Specifically, we're talking about those inspired by OpenAI's o1 series. You know, the ones that are known for, well, they're pretty amazing reasoning capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of the stars of the show right now in the LLM world. And they use this really neat technique called test time scaling. It basically means they can use even more computing power when they're actually solving problems. It's like giving them a boost to get even better results.
Okay, I get that. So they get smarter as they're working on something. That's pretty cool. But here's where things get really interesting. This research kind of flips the script on what we usually think about o1-like LLMs. Like, you'd think that the longer their chain of thought is, the more accurate they'd be, right? Like, the more they think, the better the answer should be.
You would think so, yeah. But that's not always what the research found. They tested this out with models like QWQ and R1. And what they found was a bit surprising. Sometimes those longer chains of thought actually made the answers worse.
Wait, so more thinking equals worse answers? That doesn't make sense. What's going on there?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? To get to the bottom of it, they looked at how these models perform when they had to generate solutions of different lengths. And get this, the average length of the correct solutions was actually shorter than the incorrect ones for the same questions.
Hold on, so you're saying the shorter answers were actually more likely to be right. That's kind of the opposite of what you'd expect.
It is, isn't it? It's pretty counterintuitive. And this pattern held up across different models and different types of problems. Math, science, even general reasoning tasks, it was there. They even saw it on A, which is a really hard high school math competition.
So what's the secret? Why are they better at solving problems when they keep things brief?
Well, they found that it's tied to this idea of self-revision. These o1-like models, they can do more than just generate a chain of thought. They can go back and actually revise it as they're working through the problem.
So they're like second-guessing themselves.
Yeah, kind of. And what's really interesting is it turns out that this tendency to self-revise can sometimes hurt their performance, especially when it comes to the smaller models.
So it's almost like they overthink it, right? Like they get stuck in a loop instead of just going with their initial answer.
Right. And the researchers actually found that if you specifically tell the model to do more self-revision, it often makes their accuracy even worse. It's like they're actually better off sticking with their first instinct, that shorter chain of reasoning.
Wow. That is like really mind-blowing. It makes you wonder if less is more for these LLMs, what's that telling us about how they learn? Like, what do they value when they're trying to figure something out?
Yeah, it's a really thought-provoking question. It challenges a lot of our assumptions about how AI works. And it leads to another question. If we know that being concise can be a good thing for these models, is there a way to actually use that to our advantage?
Okay, now you got me hooked. What's the next step?
Well, the researchers looked into another way to boost performance, something called parallel scaling. It's kind of like giving the model multiple brains to work on the problem all at once.
Interesting. So instead of making the chain of reasoning longer, we're giving them more processing power in a different way.
Exactly. It's like having a whole team of experts tackling the problem from different angles. And then you get to pick the best solution from the whole group.
So instead of one long, complicated chain of thought, we have a bunch of shorter ones happening at the same time. I kind of like the sound of that.
Yeah, and the best part is, it actually works. They found that this parallel scaling approach actually leads to higher accuracy, and it makes it more likely they'll find the correct answer. And all of this using the same amount of computing power overall.
Okay, now we're talking. So how does this parallel scaling thing work? Is it a totally new idea?
Well, the idea of generating a bunch of different solutions and then choosing the best one, that's not brand new. We already have things like best of n search, where you basically create a bunch of solutions and then use a separate reward model to pick the highest scoring one. And then there's majority vote, which groups similar answers together and then goes with the most popular option.
Okay, so what's different about the parallel scaling approach they used in this research?
What's really interesting is that most of the existing parallel scaling methods out there, they don't really consider the length of the solution when they're deciding which one's the best. They focus more on things like the reward score or how many votes it got. But remember what we just talked about, solution length.
Right. The shorter solutions were more often the accurate ones. So are you saying they found a way to use that information in their parallel scaling method?
You got it. They came up with this new method called shortest majority vote. It kind of combines the best of both worlds. Like traditional majority vote, it groups the similar answers together. But then it also takes into account the average length of the solutions in each group. And it gives a little bit of preference to the shorter, more concise answers.
So it's like saying, hey, if a bunch of these brains all came up with short and sweet solutions that point to the same answer, that's got to be a good sign.
Exactly. It's like if you have a bunch of people trying to work out a puzzle and the simplest solution that everyone agrees on, that's probably the right one.
I love that analogy. Okay, so does this shortest majority vote thing actually work better than the other ways of doing things?
It does. They found that it consistently outperformed regular majority vote and even a simple shortest solution baseline. And remember that really tough AIM math benchmark we talked about? Shortest majority vote totally crushed it.
Wow, so they basically aced a high school math competition by using AI that values being concise. That's amazing.
It is pretty remarkable, right? And it shows that if you incorporate the solution length into how you decide the best answer during parallel scaling, you can get some big improvements in performance. It's like we've found a new way to tap into the power of these LLMs by encouraging them to think more efficiently.
This is huge. We've gone from overthinking to parallel processing to now concise reasoning. I mean, what's the main thing we should take away from all of this?
Well, I think the most important point is that it's not always true that the more these advanced LLMs think, the better their answers will be. Sometimes less is more.
And that the length of the solution can actually tell us a lot about how good it is.
Right. And by figuring out these little nuances, we can come up with new and creative techniques, like this shortest majority vote idea, to make them work even better. But this all leads to a big question. If shorter, more elegant reasoning is sometimes the key, what's that telling us about how these models are learning and what they focus on when they're solving problems?
It really makes you wonder, like, are they learning to value efficiency the same way we do? It's a really interesting thought. Like, maybe simplicity is a sign of intelligence, not just in humans, but in AI, too.
Right. And this idea of shorter solutions being better, it led the researchers down a really interesting path. They started looking into this thing called shortest majority vote. It's based on this idea of parallel scaling, where you basically give the model a bunch of different brains to work on the problem all at the same time.
We talked about that a bit in the first part, right? It's like having a whole team of experts all working together.
Exactly. So with the existing parallel scaling methods, they usually focus on things like the reward score or how many votes a solution got when they're trying to figure out which one's best. But what's cool about shortest majority vote is that it also takes into account how long each solution is.
I see. So it's using that less is more idea and applying it to how they choose the best answer out of all the ones those different brains come up with.
Precisely. It's like if you had a group of people trying to solve a puzzle, right? And a bunch of them came up with short, simple solutions that all pointed to the same answer. You'd probably feel pretty good about that answer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's like a built-in check to make sure things are on the right track. So how does shortest majority vote actually stack up against the other methods?
Well, the results are pretty impressive. It consistently beats regular majority vote, and even just picking the shortest solution every time. And remember that A math competition we were talking about? Shortest majority vote did really well on that.
So it's helping these LLMs solve tough math problems by encouraging them to be more efficient. That's amazing. It's crazy how much we're learning about how to get the best out of these models.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It shows how powerful it can be to combine ideas from different areas. Like we started by noticing this weird connection between solution length and accuracy.
Yep.
And that led to this whole new way of doing parallel scaling. It's like a perfect example of how scientific discoveries happen.
I know. This whole deep dive is making me rethink how I approach problem solving. Maybe I need to embrace being more concise myself. But all of this brings up a bigger question. What does this all mean for how we understand intelligence itself?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it? Is this thing with efficiency just a quirk of these specific LLMs? Or is it something deeper, like a fundamental part of what intelligence is?
I mean, do we as humans also kind of gravitate towards those more elegant and efficient solutions when we're working through problems?
It's definitely possible. Think about those times when you're stuck on something for hours and then suddenly the answer just pops into your head, like a flash of insight. It often seems like the simplest solution was there all along, we just couldn't see it.
Oh yeah, totally. I've definitely had those aha moments. It's like everything just clicks into place.
Right. So maybe there's something similar going on between these LLMs and our own brains. It's a really interesting area to explore.
This deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the idea that efficiency and conciseness, they might be more important than we realize. Like maybe they're not just nice to haves, but essential parts of how intelligence works.
That's a great point. And as we keep learning more about AI, it's important to keep challenging our assumptions. The answers might surprise us and lead to some pretty amazing discoveries.
It's amazing, right? We started out talking about all this complex stuff with LLMs and how they're pushing the boundaries of AI, and now we're here talking about the importance of keeping things simple. Like, the more we learn about these crazy advanced models, the more we end up appreciating the power of elegant solutions.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? It just goes to show that we still have so much to learn about how these models actually work, and really about how intelligence works in general. I mean, there's so much more out there to discover.
It really makes you think, like what other assumptions about AI do we have that might be totally wrong? What other cool things are waiting to be found?
That's what's so great about science, isn't it? It's all about questioning what we think we know and pushing the limits of what we thought was possible. And every time we make a new discovery, it opens up a whole new set of questions and possibilities.
Speaking of questions, there's one that I've been kind of thinking about this whole time. We've talked about how these o1-like models seem to be drawn to concise reasoning and efficiency. But what does that mean for the future of AI? Like, where do we go from here?
That's a great question. And it's something that a lot of researchers are really digging into right now. Like, imagine if we could use this knowledge to build AI systems that are even more powerful and efficient than what we have now. Models that could solve super complicated problems in a snap, really accurately, but without needing a ton of computing power.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But seriously, if that were possible, think about the impact it could have. Everything from medicine to engineering to, I don't know, maybe even art could be revolutionized.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just efficiency and speed, too. This research also gets us thinking about how creativity and innovation work. If these models can figure out new and clever solutions, what does that tell us about the creative process itself?
It makes you wonder if there's some kind of link between efficiency and creativity, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe the ability to cut through all the clutter and find the most elegant solution is what makes both human and artificial intelligence so creative.
It's an interesting thought, for sure. And it highlights how important it is to bring together different fields of study like computer science, cognitive science, even philosophy, to really get a deeper understanding of intelligence in all its forms.
Well, this deep dive has been a wild ride, and honestly, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. Like there's so much more to learn about LLMs and AI in general.
I agree. And the most exciting part is that we're learning new things every single day. The field is constantly changing, and I can't wait to see what breakthroughs are just around the corner.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. We've talked a lot about all the technical stuff, but the real takeaway here is much bigger. It's about being curious, questioning what we think we know, and embracing those unexpected discoveries.
I love that. And remember, whether you're an AI whiz or just starting to learn about this stuff, always keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never underestimate the power of a simple, elegant solution.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thanks to our expert for taking us on this incredible journey into the world of o1-like LLMs. And to all of you listening out there, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.